the industrial carbon tax 6 times greater. And also we are tightening rules in other areas.
The honorable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you can't build homes if you run out of the House.
Right.
And that's what the Prime Minister is doing right now.
Who cares?
Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. Yes, and we're back. Apologies for the false alarm yesterday with the show. Had some issues to deal with, but we're back. And double the show, I think, today. We got so much happened yesterday. We will be talking Bill C-9. We've got a lot to talk about. Thank you for joining Stand on Guard. I'm broadcasting live this morning from a very cold Ottawa, colder than usual. We'll be back in mere moments.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So much happening right now. It's very difficult to keep track of everything. We've got what's going on in Alberta, and I've got a brief clip from Jeff Rath to show you later. I'll be playing the whole interview with Jeff later today in a separate show. You might find this extremely interesting, what's going on in Alberta right now. It is chaos across the country in terms of what's going on. So what's the latest on Bill C-9? This is the latest censorship bill, the hate crimes bill, hate speech bill, hate symbols bill. Well, it's been held up in committee, Justice Committee. It wasn't on yesterday. So here we are Friday, and committees generally aren't meeting on Fridays. So it looks like the pushback from C-9 has been effective. But we'll be talking about that in a little while. Let's have a look at what's going on with the Parliamentary Budget Office right now in housing.
Showing off his construction chops has been a regular photo op for Mark Carney, accompanied by bold promises.
We will build at a pace not seen since the Second World War.
But a new report from the interim parliamentary budget officer says the Liberals are nowhere on track to meet the Prime Minister's lofty goals.
We estimate about 26,000 units will be created over the next 5 years.
The Liberals, who have previously sparred with the PBO, dispute the numbers, saying their spending will help build 86,000 units.
I think this is just the beginning, and we're going to deliver a ton of affordable housing, and we're going to leverage a lot of investment from across Canada to get that done.
The honorable leader of the opposition.
The report, political ammunition for the Conservatives.
Why won't he listen to us and stop building bureaucracy so that we can start building homes?
The great thing about being a lifelong member of Parliament is you've never built anything and you don't know numbers.
Numbers the Liberals don't dispute, a 56% cut in federal housing funding from 2025 to 2029, with multiple current programs expiring without replacement. That has leading housing experts saying Carney's goal of building 500,000 houses annually won't be met.
The last 2 years of the Trudeau government were more ambitious on housing than what we've seen from the Carney government.
While the finance minister is promising additional funding for housing in the future, the Liberals have already guaranteed massive increases to other key programs.
We'll have accelerated old age security spending by $29 billion in a single year. Here you have the PBO saying we're going to cut spending on housing in that same year. That is just a very big intergenerational tension.
A core Carney campaign message was wanting to build things at speeds never seen before. But the PBO's housing report is one of the first major indicators that Carney's promise isn't coming to fruition. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Yeah, so that's where we stand with this. I find this whole issue of Stellantis to be absolutely fascinating. minister never read Stellantis' contract. And of course, we're finding out the Stellantis contradicts government, says it never requested redactions to contract provided to MPs. In response, Industry Minister Melanie Joly said that her department would finally release the unredacted agreement to the committee after repeatedly refusing to do so. So this is just another fine mess we're into here. But I find, what fascinates me about this conflict now within Alberta over the pipeline project that is nothing more than a memorandum of understanding. And as I repeatedly like to say, if you've worked in government, a memorandum of understanding is a dime a dozen. They're literally being created every day, and they're sometimes not worth the paper they're printed on. So what is going on with Stephen Guilbeault having conniptions about this pipeline that's probably never going to happen? But it's interesting. He's now become like a whistleblower. And here's Blacklock's reporter. Guilbeault, math on electric car mandates doesn't add up, says Budget Office report. Analysts figure EV costs would have to plunge 31% to meet the Environment Canada mandates. And he's actually saying this in, we can find it here. Hold it. Not going to have to download this, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry, it didn't delay here. Where this Guilbeault piece is just absolutely fascinating. I guess we want to show it to you. Here we go.
A lot of Canadians watching would ask that question. If you don't feel like you can defend, on principle, essentially, you have to resign from cabinet because of the agenda that they're pursuing. How can you stay in the government, period?
Well, I have a profound disagreement with the Prime Minister on how he and his team want to continue moving forward on climate change. And as I said, I don't see the plan. I don't see the math right now. And maybe they can prove me wrong in the coming months. That being said, I still think that the best person to serve Canadians and to help us, to guide us through those difficult times we're going through is Mark Carney. Without Prime Minister Carney, we would not have had the historic investment in the arts and culture that was in the last budget. We certainly wouldn't have measures that are continue to support Canadians like childcare, like dental care.
Okay, so I don't think he can add, but he's the best man for the job. Nice try, Stephen Guilbeault. So let's get before we get on the C-9, I wanted to show you this as well about the Stellantis situation, which is just, again, theater of the absurd. Canada has become a theater of the absurd.
With the redactions that they're proposed. In our discussions with Stellantis, we're comfortable with the redactions that they brought to this document. Best to ask Stellantis.
Did you consult with the minister on these redactions?
No, we did not interact with the minister or the minister's office related to the redactions.
So you're given free rein and the minister has no oversight to what the department does?
We were satisfied that the spirit of what was requested was followed by Stellantis, as has been the case in previous cases where we've had interactions with companies.
Well, I hope you leave today with the impression that members of Parliament are not satisfied with the state of the documents as they are. We requested unredacted documents. Has the minister seen the fully unredacted contract?
If she has, it wouldn't have been through my office, so my sense is no. I have actually not seen the fully unredacted version myself.
You said everybody at the table had seen it earlier, now you're saying you haven't. But to say that there's only been 4, maybe 6 other people that have seen this contract, I mean, has Privy Council, has PCO seen this contract unredacted?
My sense is no, they would not have seen it. We really treat these documents with a lot of care. Had it been negotiated when I was deputy, then I would have seen the document.
Okay, so the previous deputy ministers saw the contract?
Well, I'm assuming that. I don't know that for a fact.
Is there a legal department that would have seen this?
Would they review the full thing, Denis, before? I don't think they do. They would see clauses if
Really?
they were outside the standard.
You're telling me the legal team for a $15 billion contract doesn't see the entire contract?
They would really pulled in where clauses are deviating from what we would typically negotiate, would be my understanding.
Okay. So you're telling me, though, that, like, somebody from legal, there should be more than, I would assume that there's somebody that's overseeing the entirety of this contract. You're telling me that it's a piecemeal approach to how we're dealing with these contracts.
So you're telling me something here should make sense? Sorry, wrong country. No, it's just bumbling, and incompetence defines this Carney government. And corruption, of course. So I keep telling the Conservative Party of Canada, if you want to run on something, if you think you want a winning solution, point your finger at Mark Carney's corruption. I think that's probably where you should be going. But so what's happening with Bill C-9? Well, some very interesting things here. You know, very, very interesting. And we've got people opposing this in a huge way. And I don't think we've seen this in a long, long time. Look at the signatories here. Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, Independent Jewish Voices, Jews Say No to Genocide, the United Church of Canada, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Center for Free Expression, Open Media, Arab Canadian Lawyers Association, Canadian Council for Refugees, Refugee Lawyers Association, International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, Le Centre de Réfugiés, Refugee Center, Canadian Muslim Health Care Network, United Network for Justice and Peace in Palestine and Israel. Oh, we'll keep British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, Palestinian Canadian Congress, Palestinian Solidarity Ottawa Center, Chinese Canadian National Council Toronto Chapter. And we're getting near the end. Harm Reduction Action, HIV Legal Network, Alliance for Trans Youth. This is clearly a left-wing coalition. All of these groups would definitely be termed as on the left. So what does it mean? Well, I can tell you what it means. It means this is becoming unraveled for the Carney government. They are clearly not on top of this. At the same time this is happening, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops has written a letter to Mark Carney expressing their opposition to Bill C-9 and the government's censorship program in general. So here's a pastor recently arrested here. This is what the country's coming to.
No, just the regular police. Okay. So you're under arrest for your breach of CSO. Can you come inside with us, please?
You're right here.
Okay. Sounds good. Are you able to drop that for me or pass it off to one of your friends? Can I finish it?
Oh, you can finish it. Yeah. You know why you're arresting this man for? He refused to apologize for his religious beliefs. Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of
He's protecting your children and your grandchildren.
The modern day Nazis.
Do you guys understand how absurd this is? This is so sad. Do you guys really understood what you're doing? You probably wouldn't be doing it. This is not a prideful thing to do. A shameful. Yeah. It's okay, buddy. It's okay.
Alberta, Canada, 21st century right now.
No, I know. It's so sad. I know. It's okay, buddy. I know. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, it's okay.
Now, thanks to Chris Dacey for that. So there's a pastor being arrested for expressing his faith. This is going to happen increasingly in Canada, especially if more of this hate speech laws come to fruition. I'm sure a lot of you wondered, maybe the cops came to David's door yesterday and hauled him away. That's before the broadcast. You weren't far from it. That is exactly what Canada looks like today. And it is absolutely shocking. And here's this coalition in action.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the media. I'm Yuen Pao Wu, independent senator for British Columbia. It's my pleasure to be sponsoring today's press conference, which is on C-9, the so-called Combating Hate Bill. As many of you know, it is still in the House of Commons in committee, but it has generated a great deal of controversy and concern among various groups, a number of which are here today. And my colleagues will be speaking to the concerns that they see in C-9. As you've heard already, we will have first the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, followed by the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, Independent Jewish Voices Canada, Legal Support Committee, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, and last but not least, the United Church of Canada. With that, let me turn to the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council. Thank you, Senator.
So this is a broad-based
civil liberties and community organizations collectively issued a joint statement on December 1st rejecting Bill C-9, the so-called Combating Hate Act. We are here as part of a coast-to-coast coalition raising the alarm about Bill C-9 and the unprecedented expansion of police and state power it represents. This coalition brings together multi-faith, civil society, legal defense, and labor communities, each sounding the alarm from a different vantage point, but united in the belief that Bill C-9 threatens core democratic freedoms and should be withdrawn.
What's in the legislation? To begin, it would repeal the requirement that the Attorney General consent to the institution of proceedings of hate propaganda offenses, which have been a crucial oversight mechanism given the sensitivity and impact of hate crime charges. Next, it would create four new criminal code offenses. First, a new offense of willfully promoting hatred against any identifiable group by displaying certain symbols in a public place, punishable by up to 2 years in prison. Second, it would create a hate crime offense of committing an offense under any other act or any other act of Parliament that is motivated by hatred based on certain factors, with sentences commensurate with the underlying offense. Third, it would create an offense of intimidating a person with the intent of causing fear in order to impede them from accessing certain places that are primarily used for religious worship or by an identifiable group for certain purposes. And fourth, it would create another offense of intentionally obstructing or interfering with a person's lawful access to such places. Finally, the bill would also integrate for the first time a definition of hate into the criminal code based largely on Supreme Court jurisprudence. While the components of Bill C-9 may appear to be measured and proportionate in order to address hate crimes in Canada, a closer examination of the details of the bill raise significant concerns around threats to free expression, freedom of assembly, and the ability for the public to engage in protest and dissent. In short, it would threaten a swath of charter-protected rights of Canadians and people in Canada.
Good morning. My name is Nir Hagigi. I'm speaking on behalf of Independent Jewish Voices Canada. We're a national grassroots organization representing thousands of Jews and allies across the country, and I'm proud to speak here today against the Federal Combating Hate Act. Over the past 2 years, we've watched with growing alarm as governments at every level have increasingly invoked Jewish identity as a political tool. In moments of public pressure, suddenly every government project of expanded policing and restricted speech becomes a matter of protecting the Jewish community. This is a deeply cynical strategy. It exploits the very real fears that Jewish people have while doing absolutely nothing to address the actual anti-Semitism coming from white supremacist, far-right, and Christian nationalist movements, the very movements that have always posed the greatest threats to us in our community. During the Freedom Convoy occupation, we had a church that opened its doors to far-right organizers, housed convoy participants, and actively facilitated a movement steeped in anti-Semitism, racism, white supremacy, and hateful Christian fundamentalism. Under Bill C-9, protesters would not have been allowed to demonstrate outside this church simply because it is a religious institution. This is war crimes would be legally protected from protest, while communities that protest genocide, violence, war, apartheid, or colonization would be criminalized. When governments adopt these distorted frameworks, they
Okay, this is very interesting. I obviously don't agree with a word this guy's saying about the Freedom Convoy. However, folks, how often do you get Jews, Muslims, and Christians, if you want to consider the United Church of Canada Christian, on the same page? Now, I don't agree with a lot of these people generally are going to say about anything, but we are in agreement on censorship being bad. We've got to use whatever leverage is available to stop this bill, because it's going to put people like you and I out of business. Now, I don't just mean literal business. I mean, it's going to end our free speech as we know it in this country. And so, very interesting. Let's hear what Mark Miller, the new heritage minister, had to say about
religious exemptions from the hate speech laws to pass Bill C-9. To remove religious exemptions from the hate speech laws to pass Bill C-9. You're the chair of the Justice Committee. Right. Is that happening?
Well, I have to question myself. Look, I'm a person of faith. I'm Christian. I have very, very deep beliefs. The reality is I don't think people should be using the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah.
Then you're not a Christian.
Torah to escape from committing a hate crime or claim that what would otherwise be a hate crime is done in the name of a religious text. You can look at the religious texts yourself and see what they mean, but the reality is that there is an exception in the criminal code that are making people hesitate. And when the conservatives come out and pretend that they are defending freedom of expression, they are defending people like Adel Shakari.
Justement, ils ont beaucoup parlé, les conservateurs, sur la haine envers les Juifs pendant les 2 dernières années, suivant ce qui s'est passé à Gaza.
There have been hate crimes against Jewish people in Quebec, and as I said in English, those people are defending hate crimes and hate language, and I don't think we should be using the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah to commit a hate crime. That is my perspective. Do you think that people are open to that change?
Removing this religious exemption from the criminal code?
Not entirely sure. I think it's been discussed for years. Certainly the Bloc Québécois showed some leadership in that area. I think it's intellectually contradictory. I think if you are a person of faith, it is contradictory to suggest that you can commit a hate crime in the name of a religious text, whether it's the Quran, Torah.
But Christian Muslim stakeholders are already saying this would be an attack on freedom of religion. So I mean, how could the government be on side with this, hearing some of the concerns already voiced from stakeholders?
I would respectfully disagree, and I think if you talk to people of faith and even religious leaders, they would see that this is really something that makes sense, and that nobody actually should be committing
a hate crime.
Let me finish my thought, but nobody should be committing a hate crime in the name of a religious text.
There should not be any such thing as a hate crime. Free speech does not exist merely to protect the ideas and the speech that Mark Miller happens to agree with. Free speech is there for unpopular ideas to be expressed. Some of them might be deemed hateful by some pinheads like Mark Miller, or people who are easily offended. I don't want Mark Miller defining what a hate crime is. I don't want the Supreme Court of Canada defining what a hate crime is. I don't want a hate crime to be in our criminal code. We need to take them all out. And we don't need more hate speech, hate symbol legislation. It's absurd. It's absolutely crackpot. But that's where we are in this country. And we're going to continue to hear this. Thank God there was initially only pushback on Bill C-9 from Andrew Lawton, the Ontario Conservative MP. And he explains here why he's fighting this. But this is incredible because there is gathering momentum. And I talked about this a couple of months ago. We need to find some common ground with people on the left to fight this, because it's going to be absolutely catastrophic if this bill is passed.
The House of Commons Justice Committee is set to meet this afternoon. Now, this is going to shock you. What the Liberals are trying to do is ram through their censorship bill, C-9. This is their so-called anti-hate bill, which the Minister of Justice admits will allow people to be criminally prosecuted for what they post online, bringing in UK-style tweet policing to Canada. The Liberals just want us to wave this through. They want us to give them a rubber stamp, a green light to make this law as quickly as possible, even though we have not had the opportunity to do the proper scrutiny of this bill that parliamentarians are supposed to be able to do. So just to take a step back here, we were supposed to have 5 meetings where we would hear from witnesses who would bring forward their concerns. We had suggested a number of witnesses representing civil liberties groups on the left and right, and 2 of the meetings on this, the last 2 weeks, the Liberals have filibustered it, so we have not gotten to actually hear from the witnesses. Now, why were they filibustering it? It actually has nothing to do with Bill C-9. It was because the Liberals were too busy not wanting to support the Conservative motion condemning light jail sentences for people who traffic in child sexual abuse and exploitation material. The Liberals should have just agreed to that motion, standing up for children, and then we could have gotten back on with our work on C-9. But that didn't happen. So here we are. We have been denied 2 critical meetings, 6 hours of witness testimony, and today the Liberals expect that we're just going to be able to put a big check mark beside C-9, a bill that civil liberties groups have said should send a chill, and does actually chill, free speech in Canada. So we are not going to let that happen. I'm going into this committee room and I'm going to tell the Liberals that we need to be focused on the actual justice priorities that Canadians have identified. Let's get back to our bail study. Police, cities, provinces, they've all been speaking up saying that cities and communities and streets do not feel safe. We have bail legislation that the Liberal government says will answer these problems, and for some reason they're too hung up on wanting to censor what people are saying online rather than actually discussing bail and sentencing reform. So what we're going to do is say that this committee should actually be allowed to do its work properly, and on Bill C-9, we should not even entertain passing this bill through committee until we've had the opportunity to hear from all of the witnesses who want to testify. So stay tuned. Justice Committee today starts at 3:30 p.m.
And here's the letter from the conference, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. This is quite interesting because this, obviously what they're trying to do here is to get this religious exemption to remain as part of Canadian law. Take this out and you have absolute judicial chaos where the Bible, the Quran, God knows, maybe even the Bhagavad Gita would be considered hate literature by somebody. We got to get out of this cycle. C-9 combined with the resurrected C-63, whatever the numerical designation is going to be for the Online Safety Act, Online Harms Act, whatever they're going to call it, is going to wipe out free speech in Canada. And of course, the Online Harms Act under Trudeau had a hate crimes component, a thought crimes component in it, excuse me. It will again. But I know the government doesn't like to listen to Catholic bishops, especially when they talk about abortion or euthanasia. But maybe they'll listen to them on this because the Catholic vote in Quebec is still quite strong. And the Catholic vote across the country. I know there's a lot of smorgasbord Catholics who don't take the church dogma very seriously, but some of them do. And the Conference of Canadian Bishops takes their faith very seriously, and I congratulate them for fighting out of this. I'm not seeing much pushback from evangelicals, although they're being thrown in jail. Better do that. Better get on with it. Because if we don't, if we don't, we're next. That's here again is the broad-based left-wing coalition against Bill C-9. And we need to see that come to pass. And play a bit of Andrew Lawton in committee here where he's talking about this bill.
Could have had more witness testimony. We could have had more insights had the Liberals not decided that 1 year was too cruel and unusual a punishment for people who traffic in child sexual exploitation and abuse material. And I find it shocking that that was what they decided was their hill to die on. Well, my hill to die on is freedom of expression. And this Liberal government has shown reckless disregard for that. When we engage in work as committee, we are the gatekeepers between law that has not been scrutinized, has not been vetted, has not been analyzed, and things that are passed by this House of Commons. When you try to aggressively and wrongfully accelerate the committee process, what you are doing is denying Canadians the opportunity to improve bad law or to, in some cases, gut terrible law. So when you try to speed up that process, it is either because you do not care what Canadians have to say, or more importantly, you know what they're going to say. And this is precisely what's happening on Bill C-9.
Precisely what's happening in Bill C-9. But the momentum seems to be building. I wasn't at all positive a couple of weeks ago that we were going to manage to get this bill stalled, at least. I mean, stalling is worthless because the bill needs to be repealed. The bill needs to be stopped or seriously amended and then repealed if it's passed by a Liberal government. It needs to be repealed by a future Conservative government. And that is quite apparent. John Carpay, a chief legal counsel and spokesman for the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, was speaking with me last week, of course, and we talked about Bill C-9. As we were speaking offline, I think you mentioned something a lot of us missed because this was a CBC French interview with Premier Daniel Smith. What happened?
Well, because I checked the date because the interview was on the 28th of November. So that was the Sunday of the AG. I
don't think the official opposition gets it. I really don't, because they had a chance to take this government down 3 weeks ago. I don't mean the last time where they were up and down deciding on whether to be present or not, because they did not want to bring the government down. There was an opportunity. I don't think they really get how dangerous these censorship bills are. And if these things go through with the support of the New Democratic Party MPs, and I believe all 7 will support this legislation, they love censorship. This country's cooked. It really is. I think we're in a hell of a mess. And I don't know why there's not a greater sense of urgency amongst Conservative MPs in the House of Commons right now. It really does bother me.
Well, the NDP did come out against Bill C-2, which was introduced in June. That was the Strong Borders Act, which I've called it the Strong Surveillance Act. And that's a bill that would give Canada Post the right to access letter mail without a warrant, creates a brand new Authorized Access to Information Act, which would empower thousands of federal government officials, not just police, to search our smartphones and our computers, prohibiting the use of cash in amounts of $10,000 or more. So you can't use cash to donate to charities or make purchases. All of this bad stuff in Bill C-2. And there was such an outcry from across the political spectrum. You know, you had the Canadian Civil Liberties Association was against it, as well as the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, but so many other groups. And so the government actually backed down on Bill C-2. They took out the sections pertaining to borders, immigration, refugees. They took that out of Bill C-2, put it into a separate Bill C-12, which has a chance of getting passed. It might get Conservative support. And the really bad stuff of Bill C-2 has been put on the back burner. And so why did this happen? Because Canadians contacted their MPs. So right now the priority is people need to contact their MPs about Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, which would, if passed, take us further down the road to becoming like the United Kingdom, where every day over 30 citizens are arrested over their speech.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked to a woman last weekend at the farmers rally here in Ottawa. Of course, this took place at 26 cities across Canada in support of farmers, agriculture, and it was really inspired by what happened at the Universal Ostrich Farms. And this woman came up to me and she said, "You wouldn't believe what happened to me." And she said, "I got a phone call from the OPP, a liaison officer, saying, are you organizing this farmers protest on Parliament Hill?" And totally shocked. How would he even know I was even going? And she said, no, I'm not organizing it. I just happened to be going. And he says, well, we're very worried about your safety. Why? Safety from whom? The cops or who? And then she got this weird meme and she blocked everything. And she basically came to me and said, it's already happening. We've got people monitoring our social media and threatening us if we do something the government doesn't want us to do. So you've seen the video of that poor woman in the UK at 2:30 in the morning. The cops at her door, basically threatening her to take down her social media, or else we might charge you. But she ends up by saying, "Okay, you haven't charged me. Take a hike. You want to charge me, then we'll talk." But it's happening in Canada, and I find it just very, very worrisome. And I'm hearing reports from people that it's already happening in anticipation, I think, of the government thinking they're going to get away with these bills. So very dangerous.
Well, like I said, people need to contact their MP because, you know, like it's okay to complain about bad laws, and it's good to get the word out to people. But then at the end of the day, you've got to take it to the next level, and you've got to contact your MP and say, vote against Bill C-9. It's an attack on free expression. If there's enough pushback against it, as there was with Bill C-2, the government will put it on the back burner.
Well, you're right. We have to take direct political action, and just being angry, being upset, protesting is not enough. MPs have to do their jobs. I'm not sure whether MPs are doing their jobs. But what John is saying here is extremely accurate. It's not enough just to complain. There has to be concrete action done. And this is why this broad coalition is going to scare the hell out of some Liberals and NDP and maybe even Bloc Québécois. Because you have to remember the Bloc Québécois are often elected in the hinterland of Bloc country, which is very, very separatist, but also very, very Catholic, ironically. You know, it's the rural parts of Quebec that vote in large numbers for Bloc Québécois. But it's a bit of an anomaly, almost an absurdity, because the Bloc does not represent their interests economically or socially. It's a far left woke party that is, I always like to say, has no business warming the seats in the House of Commons because it is a separatist party and should not be engaged in federalism. Choose one side or the other. Go back to Quebec. But the Bloc cannot ignore the growing sentiment amongst Catholics against Bill C-9 and the religious exemption that will be taken out of the Criminal Code of Canada for so-called hate crimes, which are non-existent. Now, so what's happening in Alberta right now? I alluded to this at the beginning of the show. I'm going to show you a segment from my interview with the Chief Legal Counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, Jeff Rath. He's been on the show many times. He'll be on again next week, I'm sure, because things are just happening at breakneck speed in Alberta. The one thing Jeff and I did not cover in this interview was how the recall legislation in Alberta is being used at an unheard of rate, including Danielle Smith, Premier Danielle Smith's own writing. So we didn't talk about that. We talked about how Premier Smith now is going to be campaigning actively for the Federalist cause prior to any referendum in 2026. That could be the referendum passed by the former deputy PC premier. That could be what Albertans get in 2026. Jeff Rath tells me they're still anticipating a question going forth where independent-minded Albertans could say yes instead of no, which is the other referendum essentially says Canada will always be a part of, Alberta will always be a part of Canada. And you're supposed to say yes or no to that one. But of course, that was never intended to be a referendum. But Danielle Smith is definitely now saying there's going to be a referendum in 2026. I'm going to be campaigning on the Federalist side. So let's listen to this conversation with Jeff Rath. As we were speaking offline, I think you mentioned something a lot of us missed because this was a CBC French interview with Premier Danielle Smith. What happened?
Well, after, it's because I checked the date because the interview was on the 28th of November. So that was the Sunday of the AGM weekend, right? So after hearing from 85% of her base that that the UCP was firmly in favor of independence and booed the MOU every time Danielle mentioned, the agreement with the federal government, Danielle did an interview with French CBC and told them in French that if she allows a referendum in Alberta, that she will be campaigning with the Federalists or for the Federalists. So all of this, there's been a lot of speculation within the Alberta independence movement in and around Danielle. Oh, she can't come out and announce yet. Oh, she's playing 4D chess. Oh, she's a really, really smart lady. She's just trying to prove that, that Confederation can't work and that Mark Carney's never going to give Alberta a fair deal. Oh, don't listen to what she says. Like, we're sure that she's on board with her base because we elected her leader of the UCP and we elected her premier. So surely she's not going to completely screw us over, right? Well, she announced to French CBC on Sunday that she intends to fully screw us over and that she's going to be campaigning with little Tommy the Commie Lukasik and Jason Kenney and standing shoulder to shoulder with all of the separate, with all the Federalists in Alberta, to campaign against in Alberta independence. So needless to say, I was completely shocked by this news. I think everybody within the independence movement, I think, has every reason to be shocked. I've been speaking to people, including Derek Smith, with the Unacceptable Fringe, who has a 500,000 person following in Alberta. He's been giving her the benefit of the doubt and has actually been putting out a lot of really nice things about Danielle, saying, oh, we got to trust her. She's going to do the right thing. Have some faith, right? Well, that faith has been completely shattered, right? I mean, the MOU was bad enough, but I honestly think that her now announcing for the Federalists and saying that she's going to be campaigning with Tommy Lukasik and Jason Kenney effectively puts an end to her political career in the province of Alberta.
Well, that's just very interesting. I thought perhaps she might just sort of take a neutral back seat to this. I didn't really expect her to come out for Alberta independence. She spent a career as a Federalist. I don't really think that was an option for her. But I am a little bit shocked that she's going to play an active role because she just went through a convention that was clearly divided in terms of her not representing the separatist sentiments of a vast majority of that party.
Well,
I think she got away with that speech.
What's that?
Yeah, she got away without any serious repercussions because I think the speech was fantastic. It was exactly what a lot of people wanted to hear. People do like Danielle Smith, and the membership, even though they're saying, well, she doesn't really represent us on the independence question, they do like Danielle Smith. They do think she's done some great work on the conservative policy issues. She's delivered some of the goods. So I think that's how she got out of this. But then to go from that saying, I'm going to stand with Jason Kenney?
Yeah,
and
little Tommy the Commie Lukasik. Like, according to her, she hates him. But I mean, I've suspected for months that she's secretly been working with Lukasik in the background, right? And and I think this just proves it. I mean, for her to come out and say that she's now working with little Tommy the Commie and the Forever Canadian folks against Alberta independence, I think says everything that you need to know about where she's at politically. The other thing is, and I think that this is, there are a lot of people that heard her speech on the weekend as saying, oh, we got it now. Danielle doesn't want to be Premier of Alberta anymore. She wants to be Prime Minister of Canada. Because right at the outset of the speech, she said, I was elected to fix Canada. And we're going, no, you weren't. Right? That wasn't even something you were campaigning on. You were elected by the people who elected you leader, who were overwhelmingly in favor of independence. And I can break it down. I mean, if you look at the last leadership vote where Danielle was elected, you had Travis Taves running. He was a Kennyite, so all of his supporters were Federalists. You had Rayjan Swanee running, for leader of the party. She's about as far left as you can go in the party without like leaving the party and joining the NDP, right?
Yeah.
Hardcore left wing, red Tory, Rayjan Swanee. Then you had Brian Jean, right, who expressly ran on the basis that he had the nerve to show up at a UCP at a APP leadership forum and tell all of the proponents of independence in that room that we were a bunch of idiots and that we could literally go screw ourselves because if he becomes leader, he would never, ever allow independence to happen. And then he proceeded to go forward campaigning on the basis that he was the only candidate that was brave enough to go into the separatist den and tell them that they were all idiots and that he was a federalist, right? So needless to say, all of Brian Jean's supporters were federalists, right? So that left Danielle Smith and it left Todd Loewen, right? So all of the people that voted, or most of the people that voted for Todd Loewen and Danielle Smith by elimination were people that favored a free and independent Alberta. So the people that elected her leader, overwhelmingly favored independence, right? The people that elected her premier overwhelmingly favored independence, but she's still saying, I'm elected to be the premier for all Albertans. No, you were elected by the people that elected you who are overwhelmingly in favor of independence.
So I invite you to watch that whole interview. I'm going to put it up later today. And it's a fascinating interview, but I invite your comments on this too, because I spoke with Nico Lagan the other night on the show we do Wednesday nights at 6:30 Eastern time called The Conservative Corner. It's actually getting some traction finally. I'm glad to see people actually watching it. It's an hour of fairly boisterous discourse. I don't think there's much we disagree on, the two of us. But he's a little more reluctant to, shall we say, ignore the faults of the federal Conservative Party. Sometimes I do, because I think it's for the national interest. It's better to have a conservative government than a liberal one. That's for damn sure. But we discussed it. We talked about Danielle Smith. Does she want to be prime minister? Is this what she's up to here? This is a question, because clearly she's talking like a prime minister, not a Alberta premier at times now. She's talking about national unity and the role she's going to play in bringing Alberta, keeping Alberta within a united Canada, and about solving the Western alienation, the Alberta alienation issue. Is she seriously thinking about replacing Pierre Poilievre? Because the two of them are definitely in conflict right now. Pierre Poilievre has no time for this pipeline project MOU. He sees it for what it is, a gross political campaign tactic, an obscene bit of politicking from Mark Carney, who doesn't really want a pipeline. And every time his environment minister stands up to talk about it, this is a victory for green energy. So clearly, Poilievre can see through this. And he's saying it's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. Don't put your faith in this, Danielle. Danielle is pushing back very hard. But does she want Poilievre's job? That is an interesting question. It's come up a couple of times this week. I don't know. Because and another thing I've heard, my friend Jason Levine said this the other day, from what he was hearing, the scuttlebutt he was hearing on the floor of the annual general meeting last weekend in Edmonton of the United Conservative Party. He was hearing people say, oh, Danielle wants a snap election to take the focus off the separation, win another one, then she can worry about the fallout from this referendum. I think that would be extremely risky. Very, very risky. Why? Because the United Conservative Party is a coalition of Wild Rose and the old Progressive Conservative Party. Now, obviously, it's about 85% Wild Rose in sentiment. It's the most conservative provincial party in Canada. It's more conservative than the federal Conservative Party. But if Danielle Smith runs an election and doesn't talk about separation, independence versus federalism, that party could split three ways: an independent separatist party, a conservative party, and a red Tory party. It could go in three different directions, and the vote would be so split that the NDP could win in a snap election. Now, that is a very real possibility, because I think it would be crazy right now to have an election when 85% of the membership of the United Conservative Party is in favor of independence. They still love Danielle Smith. See, there's a huge disconnect here. We love Danielle Smith, but we don't agree with her on federalism, is what most of the party members are saying. Well, how long are they going to love Danielle Smith if she continues to push federalism when they want separation? It's untenable. It just is not going to work. It doesn't ça ne fonctionne pas, as Mark Carney would put it. It doesn't have room for growth, and it is absolutely without foundation. So we're going to wait and see what happens here, but keep your eye on the Alberta question, because I don't know where Danielle Smith is going to go with this, especially if this pipeline project fizzles out. Is she suddenly going to wrap the cloak of Alberta independence around her, or at least a strong Alberta within a sort of united Canada? Is that where she's going to go next with this? Because there aren't too many places she can go if the pipeline doesn't come to fruition. And that's my analysis of this today, and I'll have more about it. Have a great Friday weekend coming up. God bless you all. Keep resolving to resist. We are fighting back, and sometimes we can see, at least incrementally, that we are winning. Bye for now. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I am going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Crayden, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.